As my name echoed through the university auditorium, I stood up expecting the proudest moment of my life. Instead, my father grabbed the microphone before I could reach the stage. In front of 230 classmates, professors, friends, and families, he laughed and said, "Don't clap too hard. She's only graduating because she didn't have a sister like Emily to compete with." The room went silent. I stood frozen, diploma only a few steps away. Dad kept praising my golden child sister while tearing me apart. He thought everyone would agree with him. He had absolutely no idea what was about to happen next. My name is Rachel Carter. I'm 24 years old, and the day I graduated with honors from Northwestern University was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day my father humiliated me in front of 230 people. If you'd asked anyone in my family who the successful child was, they would have answered without hesitation. My older sister, Emily. Emily had always been my dad's favorite. Every birthday, every holiday, every family dinner somehow turned into another speech about how smart, talented, and extraordinary she was. When Emily won a spelling bee, Dad framed the certificate. When I earned straight A's, he asked why I hadn't joined more clubs. When Emily landed a marketing job, he called the whole family. When I earned a full academic scholarship that saved nearly $200,000 in tuition, he simply nodded and said, "That's what you're supposed to do." After enough years, you stop expecting applause. You just keep working. While other students spent weekends relaxing, I tutored classmates, worked 20 hours a week at the university library, and survived on coffee, instant noodles, and determination. I never asked my parents for money. Not because they couldn't help. Because I already knew the answer would somehow become another lecture about Emily. Mom rarely argued with Dad. She would squeeze my hand under the dinner table sometimes, silently apologizing, but she never challenged him. Eventually, silence became another member of our family. Graduation morning arrived with bright sunshine and nervous excitement filling the campus. Students posed for photographs. Parents hugged their children. Professors congratulated graduates as everyone slowly filled the auditorium. I spotted my family near the center section. Mom smiled proudly. Emily waved. Dad barely looked at me. Instead, he was busy telling another family how Emily had been promoted twice before turning 30. I wasn't surprised. I had stopped competing years ago. When the ceremony finally began, names echoed through the auditorium one by one. Then I heard mine. Rachel Carter. My heart pounded. For years of sacrifice had led to this moment. I stood, adjusted my graduation cap, and walked toward the stage while applause echoed around me. Then, everything stopped. My father suddenly stood from his seat. Before anyone understood what was happening, he walked toward the microphone reserved for family remarks after the ceremony. He smiled confidently. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced loudly, "before you celebrate Rachel, remember something." The auditorium fell completely silent. Dad pointed directly at me. If she'd had a sister like Emily beside her every day, she never would have looked this successful. A few uncomfortable laughs escaped the crowd. Most people simply stared. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. Then, just as I forced myself to keep walking toward the stage, someone unexpected rose from the front row. The person who stood wasn't my father. It was Dr. Michael Henderson, the dean of the College of Business. He walked calmly onto the stage, his expression unreadable, then gently took the microphone from my father's hand. "Mr. Carter," he said politely, "thank you for sharing your thoughts. Now, if you'll allow us, I'd like everyone here to hear the rest of the story." Dad stepped back, clearly expecting praise to continue. Instead, Dr. Henderson turned toward the audience. "Rachel Carter isn't simply another graduate." He looked directly at me and smiled. "She finished first in her department." A wave of surprised murmurs swept through the auditorium. I hadn't told anyone outside the university, not even my family. The dean continued. "She earned every semester of her education through scholarships and academic excellence. She also worked part-time throughout all 4 years without allowing her grades to slip." Dad's confident smile faded. Before anyone could speak, Professor Linda Morales stood from the faculty section. If we're recognizing Rachel today, she said, people deserve to know she also volunteered hundreds of hours tutoring struggling students. Several students immediately began nodding. One young man stood up near the back. I would have failed economics without Rachel, he called. Another student raised her hand. She helped me after class every week. She never accepted $1. More voices followed. She tutored me before finals. She helped our entire study group. She stayed after campus close. The applause grew louder. I stood frozen, completely overwhelmed. I had never expected anyone to mention those evenings spent helping classmates. To me, they had simply been the right thing to do. Professor Morales smiled warmly. Rachel never asked for recognition. She believed success meant helping others cross the finish line too. The audience erupted into even louder applause. I noticed Emily lowering her eyes. She looked less embarrassed than heartbroken, almost as if she had finally realized what had been happening all these years. Dad cleared his throat and forced a nervous laugh. Well, that's wonderful, he said. I was only trying to motivate her. That's how our family jokes. No one laughed. Instead, another professor stepped forward. I've spoken with Rachel many times over the last 4 years. He looked directly at my father. Not once did I hear her complain. She simply worked harder every time someone underestimated her. The room became completely silent. Dad opened his mouth to answer. Nothing came out. Then Dr. Henderson glanced toward the awards table beside the stage. He picked up a sealed blue envelope. Smiling, he looked at me before turning back to the audience. There's one more announcement, he said. And even Rachel doesn't know about this one. Dr. Henderson carefully opened the blue envelope and unfolded the letter inside. His smile widened. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, Rachel Carter has been selected as this year's recipient of the National Future Leaders Fellowship. The audience gasped. This fellowship is awarded to only one graduating student in our entire state. My heart nearly stopped. I hadn't even known my professors had nominated me. Dr. Henderson continued. It includes full funding for graduate school, leadership training overseas, and a research grant worth $100,000. For a second, the room was completely silent. Then every person in the auditorium rose to their feet. The standing ovation echoed through the hall. I covered my mouth, fighting back tears. Professor Morales handed me the fellowship certificate before quietly whispering, You've earned every single bit of this. As the applause continued, students began calling out from different rows. Congratulations, Rachel. You deserve this. Thank you for helping us. Those voices meant more than any award ever could. I looked toward my family. Mom was crying openly. Emily slowly walked toward me. She wrapped me in a hug and whispered, I'm so sorry. I pulled back, confused. She shook her head. I never wanted Dad to compare us. I always admired you. I just didn't know how much it was hurting you. For the first time in years, I believed her. Then Dad stepped forward. His confidence was gone. His shoulders looked smaller somehow. Rachel. He began quietly. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. His voice cracked before he could finish. I thought pushing you would make you stronger. The auditorium remained silent. Every eye turned toward me. Someone handed me the microphone. I looked at my father, then at the hundreds of people surrounding us. For years, I'd imagined proving him wrong. I thought success would finally earn his respect. Standing there, I realized something unexpected. I didn't need it anymore. I smiled gently and spoke into the microphone. Today isn't the day I prove my worth. I paused. It's the day I stop asking anyone else to recognize it. Not just my father. Anyone. The room became so quiet that I could hear someone quietly crying near the back. Dad lowered his head. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. For the first time in my life, he had nothing to say. The applause returned, louder than before. Not because I had embarrassed my father, but because I had finally stopped measuring my value by someone else's approval. As I accepted my diploma, I felt lighter than I ever had. That afternoon, I graduated with honors. But the greatest achievement wasn't the degree in my hands. It was leaving that stage knowing my future would never again be defined by comparisons, favoritism, or impossible expectations. For the first time, I wasn't walking in my sister's shadow. I was finally walking toward my own life.